Among humans.
And it's people like you have helped me. That's been my goal for life. Not easy. But I think I finally, with the help of people like you, are learning to be a human among humans.
Well, then I'm honored.
We might explore that some other show. But this show, this is your life show. This is before your time. But they had a television show where someone in the audience was surprised when the MC said, "Carolyn Myers, this is your life." And they invited her up to stage, and her parents and her family. So we're doing it just with ourselves.
So my family's not going to come walking in through the door.
No, but this could be on YouTube, if you approve. So this is Kelly Marinick. We might tell you the story about her last name. We'll see. And we're going to begin at the beginning. What is your first memory?
Ooh, that's a good question. My first memory is actually being a little girl in Key West. So my family growing up, I always say that I was raised in Key West, Florida, which is the southernmost part of the United States. And it's a big, eclectic type of place to grow up in. And so we had a little house down there, and I remember running out the front door naked and turning left to go to the library.
Wow, what a nice memory, I guess.
Yep, so, and that's just kind of how life was in Key West. It was very chill, very go with the flow. We lived a couple doors down from the library, and that's where I spent a lot of my time, and it was just a really nice kind of, Caribbean style to grow up in.
Well, I love that. There doesn't seem to be any drama or trauma in that beautiful first memory.
No, yeah.
Wow. Naked, I run out and go to the library. Oh, I'd be a much better human being. That was my first memory.
That's the first one that pops in my head.
Yes, that's what we want. And so you're beginning to grow up in Key West with your mother and father and big. You have a sibling too.
Yes, my big sister.
Who's 7 years older than you.
She is, yes.
So what is that like growing up in Key West? I have a friend of mine who grew up in Key West.
Really?
Also, yes.
So we lived in Pennsylvania in about 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia, and then we would go down to Key West for Easter, Thanksgiving. So all these kind of like core memories, core times in my early childhood, I would just attribute to being down there. But you asked about growing up with my sister, and my sister did not like me when I was growing up. She was 7 years older than me, so she was the only child. She had all the attention. I came around. I was loud. I was...
Wow.
Yes.
That's hard, though.
Yep.
Because she could have been a loving... If she was maybe of a different attitude, she could have loved you dearly as her own child.
Yes, when we were children, but she's like that now. We always say how we're complete opposites. And so, growing up, she would rip the heads off of my animals.
Wow.
Yes. But she was tough. She was really tough on me when we were growing up. And it was hard. It was hard because I wanted to be closer with her. As, many people want to be close with their older siblings. You idolize them.
Yes.
She's doing all the cool stuff. So when I was in middle school, she's in high school. But what was nice is that she toughened me. And now we're very close. And our relationship has completely changed. But early on, it was not easy.
And what changed it?
I think, honestly, was me going to school and creating distance between the two of us and us becoming adults. I think as children, we had a hard time connecting and getting along because a lot of stuff was going on in my family. My father was an alcoholic. There was drug addiction going on.
Alcoholic and drug addiction?
Yes, separate people. But my father was an alcoholic, and my mom.
When did you realize this?
He was an alcoholic when my sister, before I was around, but when I was 5, my parents separated.
Oh, my.
And then he moved down to Key West.
Yes.
My father. So there was and then my sister was going through puberty at this time.
This is hard.
It was
Wow.
challenging.
Wow.
So, and when you're a kid, you don't understand. You kind of just are more flexible and you're adaptable, and at least me, I can speak from my own experience, I've started to understand that trauma and uncovering that through therapy and through my own personal investigation into it. And my sister's the same.
This is later in life.
Yes, this is why we're closer now. That's why.
And as a child, you just think that's the way things are? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I listened to what my mom said. I listened to, I just wanted to keep the peace and wanted to make sure everyone was happy. And I realized that now it was actually very traumatic what was going on, but I was very lucky to have a very supportive friend network.
Wow.
I have my best friends. One of them I shared a crib with when I was a baby, and another one I met her when we were in 2nd grade. We actually hated each other in 1st grade, and then we became best friends. And
this is in Pennsylvania?
Yep.
And you're living with a single mother? A single mother or remarried?
My mother had a boyfriend who became my stepfather.
Oh.
They didn't get legally married, but they were domestic partners.
And how did you get on with him?
He was great. He is great. He, obviously it was hard with the transition, but for me, I think it was less challenging than for my sister. My sister was, I think, 13 when everything.
And so it was closer to your dad in some way.
She knew life more with my father than I did. I was 5. I was more adaptable in the sense that I didn't have so much of a routine set in place from a family systems perspective. And when Don, my stepfather, came into the picture, I was like, okay.
Wow.
And it turned out, my dad was going through his own stuff in Florida, and I think, if you asked my sister these questions, she would have a very different perspective on that time because of where she was at in life. Where I was at in life, it was going to elementary school or doing community cheerleading on the weekends. So it was different, and that kind of continued into middle school and high school. We'd have to go down and visit my father, but we weren't allowed to talk about my stepfather because my mom, she was worried about child support and about him not paying child support.
Oh, my.
So we had to keep that under wraps. And that, at that time, going back to being flexible and adaptable as a child, that was very weird to not talk about or have to lie about your life back home to your father because there's a mistrust. There's a trust that there's not going to be support. So it was a lot, and I say it's a lot, but really it's a tangled web to untangle, and I think that's what a lot of the work that my sister and I did in our early adulthood has really helped us to find peace and understanding and acceptance and forgiveness through everything. Because one of the biggest things that I came out of this is that for me, it became difficult to judge my parents' decisions because I realized they made decisions based on where they were at in life, and they were just trying their best. And based on their journey in life, the decisions that they made were at that time. And just accepting that and understanding your parents as people, not as these people that can do no wrong.
Wow. Mm-hmm. How did you come to this?
So I actually came to this because it's when I was in college, the beginning of our junior year, a very close friend passed away suddenly, very unexpectedly, and that at that time I wasn't really talking with my dad. We would have a call maybe once every month or two. I would go down and see him once or twice a year, and it kind of shook me to my core that at that time, like, God forbid anything happened to him and he would pass, and I'd have all these words and feelings left unsaid. And I would live with that. And I realized that, and we started talking more, and I forget exactly the timeline of how things happened, but what happened was, I confronted him about everything that I was upset with him about, and everything.
For example?
That he left us. And
he was the one who left.
Mm-hmm. So he left kind of very quickly. Like, my mom went out one night, she came home, and he was gone and living in a hotel the next day. And again, I was 5, so I don't know about my sister would know more. We had that house in Key West, and he went behind my mom's back and took out a second mortgage and forged her signature, so we lost the house.
Oh my God.
So I confronted him about all these things in a way that it wasn't an argument. It was just a, hey, you did this, and it hurt me, and it hurt our relationship. And, to go back a couple years, when I was in 6th grade, I was in a cheerleading competition that got to the nationals in Florida, and he was supposed to come. But he had been drunk driving and pulled over on the side of the road and fell asleep in the car with the windows up. And so he almost died. So we had to go to the hospital on this whole situation. So luckily he had recovered. He stopped drinking. And my point is that it was really scary to confront him about everything, because I felt, he might have excuses or he might argue. And it was a perfect point in his life where I think he was coming to terms with the mistakes and the regrets that he had, that we were able to have this dynamic conversation, this open conversation, that from this hurt and this pain and the difficulty sprouted this closeness and this deep love for one another.
Wow. Did he have another woman friend?
No.
He left your mother and just stayed alone?
Oh no, he had women friends down in Key West in Florida, but nothing that ever stuck.
Ouch. Well, because, oh my.
So,
So what kind of life was his then? What did he think of his life at the end?
He was happy.
No!
Yeah, yes. My dad lived he lived a very beautiful and colorful life, and it's difficult for me to share kind of the worst of it first, because he was very successful and colorful.
What was he successful at?
He was a businessman.
What kind of business?
Oh goodness, he did security systems for large-scale prisons, airports.
Gee.
He created the first Easy Pass for Maine.
Wow.
Maine Turnpike.
Oh wow.
And then he did very well, but then the alcoholism got in the way. And when he had a family, he ended up moving to Key West when my parents separated. And in Key West, he had gone to Thailand to visit a friend, and he ended up. We would sell Thai sarongs and tapestries out of our house in Key West. So he created his own company, and he would sell those to the patrons. So it was a very kind of bohemian life where I'd be young, and there'd be sarongs flowing from the rafters, and our house was all wooden. And people would come and say, "Oh, I heard, Island Bob is selling sarongs." "Oh yeah, here they are."
And the sarong is something you put over your middle?
Yeah, it can go over kind of like a skirt, a very long skirt, and go around your top, and then they tie. And they're beautiful, intricate colors. He sold pants, all like very light material from Thailand.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm. So he did that, and then when he left Key West, he was a real estate agent. Yeah, he was happy.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think he found joy in little things, in the simple pieces of life after living such a big life. He traveled all over the world. So yeah, he did a lot, and he was happy at the end. He recently passed away on May 24th, 2023. So he
How old was he?
he was 74.
But he didn't. He had stopped being an alcoholic.
Yep.
And you got closer to him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
What gave you the? I never had that. We're a different generation. I could talk honestly with my mother, but never with my father. Never, never, never. We would talk intellectually. But I couldn't. I once told him when we were trying on sport coats and I was looking in the mirror, I feel ugly. He said, don't talk that way. So there wasn't an opportunity to talk the way you have talked to your father. Are you unique? I mean, not alone in that, but what gave you the impetus to do this?
Well, my friend Olivia passed away in college very abruptly. And it was at that time, I don't know, they must have overlapped, but I remember my father saying to me, Kelly, in your life, I've done a lot of things, I've hurt people, but at the end of your life, you want to minimize your regrets.
Wow.
And he said that to me, and it pissed me off.
Oh, how old were you?
I was probably 19 or 20.
Yep.
But this was before we had come together and healed our past. And he said to me, I was like, what the heck? What do you mean minimize your regrets? You left us. You did all these things and I'm saying this all in my head, and it created such a heaviness in me and such a...
Yes.
What the... And that is, and I think I asked him after my friend Olivia passed away, after he said this to me, I said, what do you regret? You minimize, what is it that you regret?
You see, this new generation is much more direct, I think. I think maybe you're a symbol of your generation. I wouldn't quite. Now I would. Thanks to people like you. And what did he say?
He said, I regret not being there, sitting at the kitchen table with your mother when you and Gina are in, say, high school, going out on dates with men and being able to sit and talk to your mother about these guys.
Wow, because he knew.
Yeah. He painted that picture of what he missed, and it still strikes me. And I would have loved to see that. But I also don't regret that he left, because I've talked to my mother about this a lot. I think it was the right thing that he did. I think that he had to, had he stayed in the house as an alcoholic, where would our lives be now?
Wow, that's very beautiful.
Because I do believe things happen for a reason, and but yes, that was one of the things that he said he regrets, and that opened up that conversation. Why did you do this? And I told him, I don't regret that you left. You had to leave.
Wow.
So we had this, I always say, and we would say to one another, we were friends. We were best friends. And we would talk every day. And
no.
Yeah. Yep. We would
How old were you when this started?
Probably 22 when after college.
And you're 27 now?
I'm 29.
29 now.
Mm-hmm. And definitely within the last 6 years, we talked. When I started my career after college, and I figured out who and what I wanted to be, started to understand myself inside. We always said two things. One, I said, Dad, you were never meant to be a father to us as kids.
Wow.
But you were meant to be a father to us as adults.
This is just extraordinarily beautiful.
And the other thing,
lucky him. He had you.
And the other thing was when we would talk to one another, when we talked to one another, I would say, he would say to me, all right, Kelly, I'm putting on my dad hat. Because we would talk as friends. But there were times that I'd say, okay, Dad, I need to put on my daughter hat here. And it would switch, okay, now you have to, we're kind of going in a different a different way.
Well, tell me what the daughter hat meant.
One time, it sticks out to me. I was living here in Somerville. I think it was like 2019. And he wasn't doing too well in the real estate market. And something like, I don't remember the exact details, but basically he wanted to take out some type of money and it was going to screw my mom over in some way. And my mom calls me all upset and I call my dad and he has this kind of like, it's no big deal. Like, your mother will get over it. And I had to say, Dad, I'm putting on my daughter hat. Everybody in the family now, my mother, my sister, you, and I, we're all on good terms. Like, don't ruffle the feathers. You do this, Gina's going to get pissed off at you, my sister. My mom's going to get mad at you. Everyone, like, you're going to create tension and ripples of it. It's not worth it. And I remember him being very quiet on the phone and just saying, okay.
Wow.
And you know, he did the same thing to me, and more so with like student loans and finances and
for example,
like, so when I wanted to go back to school in 2021, we had to sit down.
You had stopped school for a while?
No, I worked. I after graduation, after my bachelor's, I have a master's in special education and I'm a certified teacher of the deaf. So I worked as a teacher of the deaf for 3 years and as a speech language pathologist assistant. And I decided, when I met Kevin, he inspired me to go back to graduate school to become a speech language pathologist.
Oh my.
That's where my true passion and heart lies. And so that's cost a lot of money. You don't make a lot of money as a teacher. So I had to take out loans, and my father and I, we had a Zoom meeting because it was so COVID-y. And he said, all right, Kelly, I have to put my dad hat on. And we went through the whole financial implications of this long term. And it was challenging. I mean, it's hard to hear that you have to pay to pursue your dreams to help people. But it was helpful. And, you know, he's still hear him in my head with that too.
And so was there any practical result of that conversation?
There was a spreadsheet and it was basically just, you know, this is how much money you're going to have to pay back at the end of it. It was 2 years.
How much was that?
I think it turned out to be $100,000.
Oh my God.
Total with loans and everything. But that, I think.
And he doesn't have the money to.
Oh no.
No.
No. This is my responsibility over time. But I think it's less than that now because we were looking at different schools at that time. So.
And you can't get rid of it by just doing some kind of work, or can you?
No, over time, like when I get a job and I'll be able to put money towards that. This is like student loans.
Yeah, I understand, but there's not like some of them are if you work for a nonprofit for a certain amount.
So some places do that. Most schools will do that. They'll do a loan forgiveness at a school. Of course, I feel my calling is in the medical field.
Yes. And
some places some places will do that. It just is dependent on the institution.
But yours is not.
I haven't gotten a job yet, so we'll see.
Oh, well, if you get a job, it's possible they would.
It's possible. It is possible.
Wow, they make it so hard for beautiful people like you. It is so.
It does blow my mind how, in the healthcare industry and in the education industry, when you want to help people to grow,
yeah,
there's so little support. It costs so much money, and it just doesn't make sense.
It was very brave to do that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. So, it will all work out.
And when your dad died, was there any inheritance?
No. No, I had to pay. My family and I had to pay money towards it.
Towards his funeral, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, he actually didn't even have a funeral yet. He didn't want a funeral. He wants to be cremated, which we did, and he grew up in Squantum.
Yep.
And so he wants his ashes scattered along the marshes in Squantum.
And there was no woman caring for him at that time?
No.
You were the woman?
Yep. So he lived in Florida, in Pompano Beach in South Florida, and he actually had head and neck cancer, similar to, like, you technically had head and neck cancer too, with the sinus.
Yes, something like that.
And it was his second time. It came back. He was in remission for 8 years.
Same here. Mm-hmm. Help.
I know.
Help.
And so it came back, and he didn't want anybody to know in the place that he lived. And we convinced him to tell his next door neighbor. His next door neighbor is a godsend. She would give him a space, but also just be like, "Hey, Bob, I made this very nice, like, they swordfish, or they hunt swordfish." And she would make swordfish, be like, "If you want it, I made it." So she would care for him. She would check in.
Oh, my.
And it was perfect. So we would talk, but when he fell, because he had neuropathy from the chemo.
And neuropathy, again, is something with your head?
No, neuropathy is the nerves in your body. So, like, it starts in your fingertips. They kind of go numb. And then it can also spread to your feet. And it's from the chemotherapy. So we thought that he was getting weaker. He thought, too, from the chemo and the neuropathy. Turns out, we find out much later, that he had a blood infection from his chemo port, which infected his pacemaker. So so before this, when he was still living at home, we relied on his neighbor to help him. And I remember saying to Kevin, it was really hard because I couldn't be there for him. I would say, "Hey, can I fly down?" He's like, "Kelly, no, don't even worry about it." I was just finishing the last couple weeks of my graduate program. And I said to Kevin, we were sitting out on our steps, and I said, if I am able to repay this kindness that my neighbor is doing, if that is sent to me, I want to take that opportunity and be that person for somebody else, because like pay it forward. And luckily that you answered
me
that.
Lucky me.
So Michael, you answered that call for the fates for me.
Oh my God!
And
well, too bad you'll be moving eventually.
Not yet, but
at least we have a year.
Yes,
we have a year.
We have a year, and that's set.
Yes.
Yes. So when you called me and you said, or when Enrique told us about
my roommate.
Yes, your roommate told us about how you were recovering from cancer. Kevin and I were like, "What? He has the same or similar type of cancer as your father." My dad had just passed away 3 days before, and we were just floored. And that was step one. And then I was running a couple errands for you. Should I tell the story?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So I was running errands for Michael, and I come back and he writes me a check for I ran to Whole Foods to pick you up a couple of things, and he writes me a check and he goes, "How do you spell your last name?" And I spell out my last name for it, and he looks at it and he goes, "Huh, I knew somebody who did 10 years in prison with the same last name." And I just
I'm gonna cry.
For me, it felt, those moments in life that everything just kind of goes quiet, and that happened for me. And I said, "Do you mean Rick Marinick?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, Rick Marinick. I've read some of his books. They're in my room over there." I go, "That's my uncle. That's my father's younger brother." And so all of a sudden the worlds collide. You ended up being the creative writing professor for my uncle. My uncle Ricky, he became an author after he got out of prison, and in his life now he's a famous author here in Boston, and all because he took Michael's class, his first class in prison.
Gonna cry. So I said, well, whether we like it or not, we're family.
It's true.
But it seems to work for the more stories that I understood, but now I do it even more.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my tale. One of them.
Yes, there's something called synchronicity, which was a term, I think I told this on my show with your man friend.
Oh yeah, Kevin. You did.
And synchronicity, so I'll leave out the story, but it means that there's energies that attract people to each other way beyond our understanding. Just very briefly, when someone was on a train in Switzerland, probably, on the fifth car of a train, he felt this urge to pull the handle, emergency brake, and the train stops. And it turned out someone had fallen on the tracks and before the first train, which he couldn't have known. So when Carl Jung, the great psychologist, read about this, he coined the term. There are energies that can affect us way beyond our understanding. And that he calls synchronicity. Mm-hmm. So maybe you living on the first floor, me on the third, being the niece of my challenging student, but wonderful student, but it helped us even become more friends.
Yes.
I feel Rick and I are family, whether we like it or not. Even Elaine, who I hardly know. So we'll see. So that's more than I understand of why that. It's very heartening, though, to know we can attract people into our lives way beyond our understanding.
It makes me think, too, about how you're born with a family, but then in life you create a family. And it made me think about how, had my Uncle Ricky never done what he did to end up in prison and then take your class, like something so awful that happened to him going to prison for 10 years, 25 years later, this happens.
Wow.
So it's a tough seed that was planted, but you never know what's going to grow.
Wow. Love it.
So, synchronicity.
Well, speaking of synchronicity, maybe, well, no, I don't want to go to you and Kevin yet, your present boyfriend who is my downstairs neighbor. So let's go on a little bit more about your life. What was it like when your dad left? You said it didn't really matter that much.
When he left, I feel like I didn't know him that well when I was 5. So when he left, I knew how hard it was for my mom, but I think I knew that more intuitively than cognizantly. My mom is a very strong woman. She handled, from my point of view, she handled everything. She worked 2 jobs.
What job?
She has worked at a school district for the administration building for I think almost 30 years now. So she worked there during the day. She would drop me off at school in the morning. And then at night, she waitressed.
Wow!
So
what's her first name?
Kathy.
Oh, it means it can be connected to the Greek word catharsis, meaning purification by fire.
Really?
And she can help herself and all of us.
She can.
Be purified.
My mom and I have always had a very special connection. I was born on her birthday. And she told me when I was older that, my sister and I are 7 years apart. And my dad never wanted a second child. He didn't want it. My mom convinced him to have a second child. And then I ended up being born on her birthday.
Wow.
And so my mom is a very strong woman. She's also very joyful.
Oh my goodness.
And she's had her own, she's gone through a lot of stuff in her life too. And
such as beside with your father or something else?
Just growing up, she's the youngest of 2 brothers, and her middle brother was terrible to her, just nasty, mean. Her older brother is 12 years older than her, and he's sweet, but he was out of the house early when she was young.
Yeah.
I believe her father, my grandfather, loved her and was very kind. Both parents loved her, but I think she had some difficulty with her mother.
Yeah.
But getting back to when my father left, I say that, I don't know if it really bothered me on a consciousness level at that time, because my mom she put on a good face. She made everything. Yeah, she made it all normal. And I think if you were to ask my sister these questions, you'd have a completely different response. And so what was weird was, the weirdest part was going down to see my dad, and we couldn't really talk about.
That was hard.
That's terrible. That was a hard
part.
part.
Oh my God, for a child not to.
And
because when Don moved in soon?
I think so, yeah. I think he moved in, again, the timeline's fuzzy in my head.
Yes.
Yeah, so he moved in, and...
and you guys got along?
Yeah, I mean, we got along.
Very nice.
Yeah. I remember he had an orange cat. He, what was the sweetest thing about Dawn that I remember from my childhood was my mom she was a waitress at night, so she would work 8 to 8, about 4 days a week. And I did cheerleading. So I did, community cheerleading I was maybe 11.
What does that mean, community cheerleading?
Like, how they have like community football where it's not a school, it's just like, the community of children will come and you sign up to do that. It wasn't, because we weren't old enough to be in high school yet. We have a team, school team. It was like the county or the district.
Yes.
So I did that with my friends, and Don would drive me to my practices all the time, but he would stay there, and he ended up being the team mom.
Wow.
So he was the team mom. He was very encouraging. He would walk around and he'd help everybody with their, make sure everyone was in the right stance and in the right movements, and making sure that if the coaches were getting a little too tough, like we're 11 years old, he was like, all right, lighten up a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. So so that was definitely my fondest memory of that. And so I don't know. I grew up, I always say, with 3 fathers. I haven't mentioned my Uncle Joe yet, but I grew up with 3 dads. And
before you go on to Uncle Joe, what did Don do?
Don was the head carpenter of the school district that my mom worked at.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's a nice job.
Mm-hmm. Very handy.
And where did they meet, you know?
They met at a bar, I think. They met at a bar that my mom went out with her friend Cheech.
Yes.
And Don drove a Harley. And I think my mom's friend went up to Don and said, my friend wants to go on a ride on your Harley.
No!
And my mom's shoes fell off.
Yes.
When she was on the ride. And I think that they just met, and after that, it's history.
Oh, this is so beautiful.
Yeah. And so.
And Uncle Joe?
So Joe was my mom's first husband, and they met when she was 20, maybe a little bit older. And Joe was a greeting card salesman, and I have a funny connection to this too. Joe was a greeting card salesman for Marion Heath Cards. And they met because my mom was working at some type of administrative role, and she had to order cards. And he would call her just to talk with her. And after talking on the phone for so long, they met at like a root beer shop, I think. And they started dating, and they got married. They were married for, I think, 2 or 3 years, and they got divorced. And Joe never remarried, but they stayed very close friends. Joe,
oh, my.
Mm-hmm. Joe, my mother's parents loved Joe. He knew her family. So there's this connection between.
Do you know why they got divorced?
I think that they were young when they got married, and I don't know the exact reason. I just think that it didn't work out from that type of relationship.
Oh, but the friendship was beautiful.
But the friendship was beautiful, and it still is beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. So Joe, when we were kids, and my mom, this is why I say I don't always remember if it was so challenging. 'Cause my mom was going through this stuff with the separation with my father, his alcoholism. My sister was going through her own things. Joe would take us to the zoo on the weekend. And we would go to the zoo, we'd go to the Sesame Place, we would... So
no wonder you're who you are.
Yeah.
So you're not someone who's just growing up with a single mother at all.
No.
Not at all.
No,
3 fathers.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a beautiful thing because each one of them is still so important in my life, but at moments of my life, they were so foundational. Joe was so important when I was like a young kid. He taught me to love nature. He exposed me to, we would go what's called creeking in Pennsylvania. So you go and walk in the creek and you go swimming, and we'd find salamanders, and he brought me in touch with that. And then Don helped me when I was a teenager and an adolescent, driving me to all my different things that I was going on, being that like protective father on dates.
Protecting you in what way?
Well, when I was dating, so he'd always interrogate people and.
Give me an example.
Oh, Don just kind of has like a macho man persona, so he comes in and he's not. He makes you a little on edge I'm sure from a male's point of view. He doesn't make it so easy.
For example.
I don't think I can't think of something he would say. It's more so the energy that he would give off.
Well, what was his posture like? Do you remember?
A little intimidating.
In what way?
Like, he would just always ask, like, oh, like, well, who's driving?
I see. Oh,
who's driving?
Oh, with clip questions like that.
Are you driving? Well, you better not be drinking.
Wow.
Like, so,
oh, good. Wow, good for him.
So, yes. And then my father was the best dad when I've been an adult, but all three of them have interwoven and intersected throughout life.
Oh my Lord.
Yes. So, I'm very lucky to have that. And, we talk about, childhood trauma, but I would not have had that had, my parents separated or my dad left and, everything happened.
So it doesn't sound like you had childhood trauma. Is that true?
No, I did. I think I just have worked through so much of it that I have a different perspective on it now.
And what was the trauma? Because we haven't mentioned it really.
Well, I don't necessarily want to.
Oh, we don't have to. No.
I'm gonna skirt that question.
Yes, I love it. Okay.
I did mention that there was drug addiction in my family.
Oh, yes, I remember.
But I'm not gonna go down that road.
We're not going down. We're we're happy, ha ha.
Yes. So so everything, I think it's about working through and thinking about what's going on in life. But also, when I was a kid, I very much pushed down what I was feeling.
Same here.
If I was scared, if I was feeling fear, if I was feeling anger, especially anger, I wouldn't let myself feel it until it exploded out of me.
Same here. I'm still working.
Yeah, me too. It's a constant,
Help us, Lord.
Yes, help.
I have to tell myself, well, it's not that I really want to pummel people. I want us to be reborn together. Mm-hmm. Take that violence and use it for, I learned when I was in Israel, serve God with the evil impulse. So if I want to hurt, I say, okay, how can I use this to help us be reborn, become better than we are, whether we like it or not?
Reworking the energy.
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So are you still friends with Joe?
Oh, yes. Oh, very much. Joe's very much a part of my life.
So you have Joe and Don.
Yep.
Oh, I have a dear friend of mine, Michelle, who has 2 sets of happy parents.
Really?
It's amazing.
Are her parents divorced and they...
They divorced. Her mother married her father's best friend.
Okay.
And they... Both those, and then her father married someone from Canada who helped run the mower store.
Okay.
And they're both happy.
Good.
They're both, so she's got, unlike many people, but not too different from you, she's got 2 sets of happy parents.
That's beautiful.
It's quite something.
Do both sets of parents get along with each other?
I've seen them sit together listening to the Boston choir, the Mystic Gospel Choir. So they talk. What's amazing is everybody takes care of all the children.
That's beautiful.
It's hard to know. I mean, and they're somewhat like me. they would just take anybody's child, this is probably an exaggeration, and just treat them as their own.
Mm-hmm.
Invite them to gospel bluegrass festivals.
Wow.
They can come from different families. It doesn't seem to matter. So it's maybe like your upbringing. Mm-hmm. These men, and how does your mother with all these men? She's probably happy. There's Don and there's Joe, and Robert maybe is not so easy.
I think it's complicated. I think my mom always said, I love people, and she always said, I love your father in a different way.
Wow.
I mean, he angered her a lot. They did not get along for many years. But I think my mom, it's hard to speak on how somebody else handles something, especially my mother, but she handles it. And it's ultimately, I think that she's content with it.
She's still alive, too.
My mom, yeah.
With Don.
Yes.
Wow.
My mother just beat leukemia in October.
Oh, woman of my heart. Oh.
Yep.
And they've never decided to be married.
They're technically married now because they've been together and lived together for so long, but they are not married officially.
Yes, I understand that. I like that in a way. Mm-hmm. I told my beloved Michelle when I'm 93, which is another 11 years, then we can get married because I want to pass whatever I own on to her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But she doesn't, it's too far away for her to take that to heart.
She has time to consider.
Okay, now we only have 10 minutes to go.
Okay.
So we have to get back to men. You mentioned Don would help you when you started dating. When did you start dating?
Oh, I think maybe I was 15.
That's appropriate time. And what was that like?
It was like dating when you're 15. It was very much butterflies. Like we'd have school dances, and then you would. Yeah, I don't remember so much. I think it was fine. It was nice. It was very juvenile, kind of immature.
In what way?
I think in the way that it was pure, in the sense that my first boyfriend, we were friends first. He was new to the high school, and we were friends first. And I was like, ooh, I kind of like him, and I would tell my friends, and then you just analyze every little minute detail.
Such as?
Oh, he came into the library during his free period because he knows I have library right now. Whereas when
you had good friendships? You sound to have a decent high school experience.
Yeah.
Unlike many of us.
I had a good high school experience because I had really good girlfriends. And I'm still best friends with those women today. I'm very lucky. It's something that's very rare.
Yes.
So I have three now, but two that I have grown up with my whole life, who have known my family in and out, have been through every single struggle. We've grown together. We've dated, gone through all the relationships. They've known everybody. So they're very protective of me, and I of them. So I did have a very good high school experience. I wouldn't change it. Yeah, I think friends make that, though.
So you went out with this first. Mm-hmm. And for how long?
I think a year.
Oh, and it ends because?
We just went separate ways. I mean, we were in high school. We just kind of were changing directions.
When you left high school or while you were in it?
While we were in it.
What would be an example of that?
He wasn't as truthful to where and what he was doing all the time. And I, growing up with my parents as such, I didn't want any part of that. So
you got tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I understand. And then what happens?
We were in physics class together, and he sat right behind me, and it was kind of awkward. So I had to always pass him his papers behind me. Mm-hmm.
So, and your next close relationship
was in high school.
Oh, and still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Who was this?
This he was a really nice kid. He played hockey. Yeah, he was super sweet, and my mom always said that I should have met him later in life, and I'm glad that we met when we did. And
Because
he was just more mature,
oh,
kind of like an older soul. Took care of me, was very kind and patient with me. Yeah, and so I'd say that was my first kind of very good relationship to work off of. And then I went to college, and we broke off.
Yes. And we only have 7 minutes, so I think I'm going to have to switch to Rick.
Okay.
Not to Rick, to Kevin.
Okay, yes.
I sometimes confuse the names. Kevin's your present man friend.
Yes, Kevin is my partner.
Yes, I love the word partner. Mm-hmm. And you meet, we've heard Kevin tell the story, but how do you meet Kevin?
So I met Kevin in a parking garage. He texted me. We met on Bumble, which is like a dating app. And
it's a special dating app, to tell us.
It's what?
It's a special dating app.
It is. Oh, it's a dating app where the woman has to make the first move.
That's lovely.
So I really like that. My girlfriend actually made me the account. I was very against dating or online dating.
Yeah.
Kevin was the second guy that I met on Bumble, and I liked it. I liked him because he was very to the point. He said, "Hey, I'd like to meet you in person. Does this day work?" I said, "Great."
Wow.
I would love it. I don't want to text people all the time. You have to meet them in person.
Yes.
So he texts me where he's going to park his car, and I just think, I don't think much of it. I'm like, oh, great, I'll park there too. And I'm driving there. I'm like, oh my God, wait, I'm meeting somebody in a parking garage. This is sketchy. And so I called my best friend. I was like, Rory, if I don't call you in like an hour and a half, you have my location. Like, I'm meeting this guy in a parking garage. Make sure everything's okay. She's like, I'm on it. So I meet Kevin. We ended up parking right next to each other, which is kind of odd. And
what's that first moment of meeting like?
Oh, goodness. I remember it so vividly. I had such butterflies in my stomach that I felt like I wasn't able to land in the present moment until we were out the door of the parking garage.
Yep.
Because there's all this anticipation. I'm meeting him live in person. He also had long hair in his pictures, and he had short hair. So I'm just I'm getting a feel for him. And I remember he had a very tight hug. Like he hugged me the first time that we met. I remember his chest being very like tight. And
wow, that's a bit much.
It was a good hug.
You didn't mind. I didn't mind it.
It was
a stranger hugging you in the parking garage.
It must have been something. But the funny thing is a week prior to that, I had gone on my first Bumble date, and Kevin was my second.
Yeah.
My first Bumble date did not like this guy. I did not have a good feeling. Didn't want anything to do with it. And when we walked around Harvard, Kevin and I on our first date, and we get to this stop sign, and I'm kind of new to Boston, to Cambridge at this time, and I'm looking around in my head, I'm like, oh wow, I think this is kind of close to where I went on that date with the guy last week, and we're at the stop sign where the.
You say that, or you just think that?
No, I think that.
Yeah.
And Kevin and I are talking, and I look up, and who do I see looking at me across the street, but the guy I just went on a date with.
Wow.
So he's staring at me, and I just go, I stop talking. Kevin has to tell me this. I stop talking. He's running. He runs by me, just staring at me. And I go, hey! And he keeps running. And I guess I'm silent, because I'm like, fight or flight, fight or flight, fight or flight. And I'm silent. And then Kevin and I start talking again, and he never mentions it during the first date, and we talk about it months later and laugh about it. But the first date, we walked around Harvard for probably 2 or 3 hours, because it was during COVID, you couldn't go anywhere. And we talked about everything. We talked about growing up, our families. I remember one thing in particular that I remember thinking, I was very hesitant to like somebody, because I was very guarded. Because I had gotten out of a relationship 2 years ago, and I took 2 years to be with myself. And to date myself and to understand myself.
Wow.
It was necessary, and I knew what I wanted in a partner, and I knew who I wanted to be and who I wanted to be with.
And what did you want in a partner?
I wanted someone who the foundations of it would be respect, loyalty, and out of that grows love. And I wanted somebody that I could have an intelligent conversation with, was the first thing. I wanted to be able to talk to somebody. And Kevin, he was telling me about when he was a kid, he would build rockets and how he had applied to be an astronaut the year before. And he's telling me these things, and he tells me how he was in mathletes in high school. And I just remember feeling...
Was in what?
He was in mathletes.
What's a mathlete?
Mathlete is like a club where you work on like mathematical problems.
Jeez.
I know. And I'm so not like that. And I just remember feeling, this guy's not trying to be anybody but who he is.
Wow.
And he was vulnerable in the way that he was himself. And
we only have a minute left, but
goodness.
What was an example of vulnerable?
When he told me that he was in mathletes, because I knew he was a little bit nervous about that. He was like, yeah, I know, it's kind of nerdy. I was like, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah, so
are you worried now? Are you just at ease?
Oh, I'm at ease. He's my partner. Kevin's my
No, you knew it then?
Oh, no, I didn't know it then.
Oh.
I mean, I was more guarded then of my heart.
Yes.
And that guard is completely down.
When did... Oh, too bad. Can you tell us in 45 seconds how the guard came down?
Kevin is the only person I can be my total, complete self with, and vulnerable person that I know that we will grow together.
And how do you know this?
I know it because we've talked about it. I can't think of with the time on... you know, he's been accepting of me, of my family, of everything, but also he encourages me to grow. And we always talk about, you know, I want you to grow into the person that you want to be, and I will support you that way. So.
Whoa, on that happy note, thank you for joining us. We'll continue. Wow.